Hello and welcome to Pro Baseball World Tour here on RGC Multimedia. Rick Crabb on the line with our Florida correspondent Eric Marin back. For those of you listening who choose to celebrate this past weekend, hope you had a happy Valentine's Day. Eric and I express our love for baseball every week on this show, and we're going to do it again this time. So, Eric, how was your weekend, bud?
I said screw Valentine's Day, and I just celebrated Chinese New Year.
Oh, okay. There you go.
It was actually, it's funny because Valentine's Day also coincides with my father's birthday.
Oh, yeah, happy birthday to him.
So he turned 81, and, we did the Valentine's birthday dinner at our club.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's how we celebrated, with a Valentine's dinner in parking lot. Because that's how COVID turned things upside down in the state of Florida.
Yeah, and I heard that Zuckerberg actually gave him a present too and let him out of Facebook jail. Is that the case, or?
Yeah, I don't know the whole story about how he landed in jail in the first place. But, anything you don't say or do controversial, which that's more or less his middle name, and so just sit on the phone and just look up.
Wow.
Look up weird crap and just post ad nauseum.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you're going to get nailed for something, and so apparently somebody nailed him, but
yeah.
Then they apologized. Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised I haven't got nailed for stuff on there. A lot of times I just share, funny and gross memes, but, that's what a lot of people do, but...
Trust me, I've had my fair share where, I'll get angry with somebody or say something stupid or, derogatory.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody will bump me off for, a few days, and at the time I was playing those stupid Facebook games like Farmville, so I was like, oh, good, I get a break.
All right. Cool. Well, this past week in baseball, we had a new champion in the Australian Baseball League, with a little bit of controversy with the playoff format. Yeah, COVID, I tell you. There used to be an old saying where it's they used to say that Father Time is undefeated when it comes to sports. I'm beginning to think COVID-19 is giving him a run for the money because, pretty much they had kind of a controversial, if not just strange ending to the playoffs for the Australian Baseball League. The Melbourne Aces turned out to win the championship for the second year in a row, although there's like I mentioned, there is a little bit of controversy about how they did it. Nothing to do with what they actually did. It seems like, they were compliant with the rules. They were compliant with the government's rules, and that was the main issue. I'm going to read to you a little press bar that they did before the championship game, which was originally going to be a qualifying game, and after I read this article, I'll explain that a little bit. Alright, you know what? Heck with the computer. Here's what happened, folks. So, they had a playoff format where they had a wild card game between the Sydney Blue Sox and the Canberra Cavalry. And the winner of that basically was a play-in spot for the playoff tournament. So, Canberra won that game, and it was an exciting game, 3-2. So, the tournament was set up where you had Canberra taking on, I believe it was Perth, and Adelaide playing Melbourne. And how the tournament was, you had those four teams play out. And then you had two qualifying games between the winners of those games and the losers of those games. So, long story short, Melbourne and Perth won their games quite easily. I think Melbourne won 19-4, and I think Perth won 26-6. It was not even close. So what you had was, you had the two losers of those games play each other to actually advance to the league championship. And that game was between Adelaide and Canberra. And that was actually an excellent ball game. That was a close ball game as well. A lot of good pitching and defense. Canberra winning that 3-2. With the original format of that tournament of them waiting to play the winner of Melbourne and Perth. However, the local government of Victoria, which I think is... How are they divided, Eric? Or are they states or are they provinces in Australia? I think they're states there, aren't they?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Well, anyway, the
time zones are such a whack job over there.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Well, long story short, the local government where the Melbourne playoff bubble, where all the games had occurred except for the playing game, which was in Canberra, the local government of Victoria basically said they had a lockdown after 11:59 Friday Australian time, or Victoria time, or Australian East Coast time, whatever you want to call it. Whatever time zone Melbourne, Victoria is in. The government basically had a lockdown. So, the ABL, they had a choice of either staging the rest of the games with no fans, or letting the game between Melbourne and Perth be the championship game. And that's what the league wound up deciding. So, the winner of that game was the Melbourne Aces over the Perth Heat, and they went on to win the 2020/21 Claxton Shield. Now, few things with that. I mean, governments, okay, you have to do what they say, I mean, they tell you can't even play any games, you can't play any games. On one hand, you could argue that if it would have been a regular tournament where you had just the 4 games, the Canberra versus Melbourne and the Perth versus Adelaide, and just go by the winners of that, and then have the winners of those games meet in the championship, which is wound up what happening anyhow, you could say, okay, fine, Melbourne won, no problem. But the way they set it up was to give the losing teams a second chance. And Canberra did that. They did what they were supposed to do. They won the game, and it was next. Actually, Canberra, I think, in my opinion, Eric, they had the 2 most entertaining games of that tournament, basically ending with the same score, 3-2. The playing game with Sydney, and then the qualifying game with Adelaide. But, so instead of them waiting to play the winner of Melbourne and Perth, they just decided to make that game the 3rd place game, and the Melbourne-Perth the championship game, which, I don't know. It'd be yet another reason, Eric, to talk to our favorite announcing team for the Canberra Cavalry, because, I mean, I'm sure there are some fans of that team in Canberra. I'm sure the team itself is probably upset about that. It's kind of a strange ending. What do you make of all that?
That whole thing was nuts. I mean, you basically did what you had to do in order to get something in there. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was actually expecting that to be like a semifinal. But, I wake up the next morning just to watch the replay. And I hear that it's the last game. I'm like, huh? So, I didn't really read into it, but then I saw something about how the entire country or a certain zone was going into lockdown. So I guess in a way you had to do what you had to do, and there was nothing you could do about it. But, I don't know. It's just a strange way to end things.
It is, and what I still don't understand, and I've said this on previous episodes with the ABL, Eric, you have the local governments. I mean, you had, like, South Wales, where, part of Australia where Sydney was, they had, like, border restrictions, and their players weren't allowed to travel without quarantine, if at all. And then you have this lockdown with this part of Australia. Yet, you watch those games, I mean, there were a couple where I did see some fans wearing masks, and you heard like announcements about social distancing and that kind of thing. But other than that, it looked like it was business as usual over there. It didn't look like a COVID era baseball game. I mean, most of them did not look that way. I mean, usually the leagues take precautions. Usually it's like we've seen with the Asian leagues and major leagues. The umpires will wear masks. The players, when they're not on the field, wearing masks. And some of them in this country, in the major league games, some of the players wore their masks while they were playing. But Australia, you didn't see any of that. And I even saw like some podcasts on the YouTube channel for the Sydney Blue Sox where they interviewed some American players that had come over and they had to wait in their team hotel for 2 weeks because of quarantine. They were shocked. They went around town and, nobody was wearing masks down there. I mean, the native Australians weren't. And I don't know. It seems like it's sending like two messages over there. I hope they don't get hit with a major outbreak. I have heard that region, it's been pretty low. I think I read something about New Zealand having a ridiculously low amount of cases, especially to this country. So I don't know. I hope everything goes well for them down there. But I mean, if it doesn't, it's like, well, like my governor of Maryland said, you should have worn the damn mask. So it's like,
yeah, who knows? I mean, I thought I read something about there was something weird going on with the tennis tournament also with the Australian Open. But, it is what it is.
It's funny you mention that because I thought that too. I went to a restaurant on Sunday and it was a sports bar and they had a few events going on. They had it was kind of a weird time of day because I think they had the Daytona 500, but it was on later on. But they had like a rerun of UFC preliminary fights. They had an infomercial with Emerald, and then they had the Australian Open, which you referred to, and they had a match between Serena Williams and some young lady from Belarus. And sure enough, this Australian Open was in Melbourne, and the stadium was empty. So, and I think they may have even pumped in some crowd noise and like Serena Williams kind of like waved to the camera like she was waving to the fans after the game ended or whatever, but game, set, and match, I guess, but yeah, it's
definitely weird.
Yeah.
But, you know what? I'm not really into tennis that much.
Yeah.
So it doesn't affect me.
No.
I'm kind of glad that the baseball at least got to finish to some sort of a definite conclusion, even though it was weird.
Right. And I will give the ABL credit, unless they are keeping cases hush for any positive cases here and they're not reporting it. I didn't see anything about any outbreaks among the players or among the coaches or fans or anything at these games. I mean, contrast that to like the MLB games here where you had the Corona Fish and the Corona Cardinals and everything else. I mean,
yeah, again, different countries were handling all this differently. More like a business as usual thing. I remember saying this from the get-go, that when everything hit last year and all of a sudden everything shut down, I was the one who said it shouldn't have shut because, now you're going to make everybody paranoid. Okay, fast forward, you've had the 475 or close to 500,000 deaths. But you know what? You weren't going to avoid it no matter what you did. There were so many abuses of protocols and stuff like that. You lost a lot of business. You had massive unemployment. But you also handled the whole process wrong.
yeah.
So I I guess what Australia did is something that we maybe could have would have should have done. So at least we would have kept the economy in order.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean, I'm not as familiar with that situation. I mean, what little bit I do know is just from watching and reporting on these ball games and such. But yeah, it's here is yeah.
I mean, all I can tell you is, how they handled it in Asia when stuff immediately shut down, and you fast forward a year later, you had maybe 800 cases in Taiwan with not even, I don't know. But the deaths are so minimal compared to here. It's just monumental how well Asia handled it, considering that the virus itself supposedly originated in Asia to begin with.
Right.
And yet their own continent handled it better than we are.
Well,
and they are, because we're still goofing up, even though the vaccines are rolling out slowly but surely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is granted, there are some densely populated parts of Asia, obviously, but there are some parts of this country I think are densely populated too, and I mean, there are a lot of cities in our country who, I heard one of the issues with your neck of the woods, I heard the biggest part of the outbreak, a lot of it was elevators from office buildings. I mean, you have these tall buildings piled on top each other, and I don't know. It's a mess, though.
It's a cold mess.
Yeah. So anyway, congratulations to the Melbourne Aces. So I probably bought what would be my last bit of memorabilia from the ABL. I bought a Claxton t-shirt from them. And prior to that, after seeing Canberra defeat Adelaide in that preliminary game, thinking, all right, you know what? I like their logo. I like that announced team. I was going to make them my ABL team of choice. So I want to say right now, Eric, to you and to anyone who's listening, especially if you're a fan of the Cavalry, I apologize if my purchasing merchandise jeopardized or somehow jinxed or caused some type of bad luck for your team. So, there you go. But, so.
You did make one good purchase, though, with the Sydney Blue Sox, even though he never played a game there.
It did. And it's funny you mentioned that, Eric, because you have a little bit of news about that individual. Folks were talking about Mr. Manny Ramirez, who was originally scheduled to play for the Sydney Blue Sox. And then just before their season started, he was unable to for reasons not disclosed. It was probably a smart move on his part, Eric, because he probably wouldn't have been able to play anyway. So, but
yeah, I don't even know what his status would have been flying over.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently his son plays in a Christian high school down here in Florida, and I got wind about it. Not only did I get wind about it, but I also saw the little hunter. So we had some good laughs. We had mutual friends in New York, so I put them on FaceTime with Manny, so, they were kind of like shocked. We were actually at a preseason Christian school tournament in Vero Beach where we saw each other first. So then he says to me, all right, come to the opener on Monday when the Christian Academy's high school's season was starting. So I go down to Fort Lauderdale, which is a heck of a lot closer than Vero Beach. Nice little quaint high school. 2 games that they got absolutely clobbered the previous week, they went ahead and mercy ruled the team that they played this week by score 15-5. Unfortunately, Manny Kid didn't start. He did come in to pinch hit during quote-unquote extensive garbage time and struck out. But it's just amazing how the imagery and, you see offspring of a former Major League star, no matter how much he cheated. And the batting stance is pretty much the same, and the swing is pretty much the same. He's just got to make one throwback.
Well, as far as the cheating, I mean, we don't know that for sure, but not even gonna go there. But it's interesting you were able to find that out, though. I mean, how did you find that out? By the way, I mean, just
you know what? It was a complete fluke. Because the only reason why I went to the tournament in the first place was because my friend's kid was on Vero Beach High School. And so I went to watch him. So apparently there were 2 games in one day. And Calvary, which is the school that Manny Jr. goes to, was playing IMD, which is one of the, I think it's actually the #1 school, high school Catholic-wise in the state. So that was supposed to be like the premier matchup of the night. So I decided to stay. What the hell? And then all of a sudden, I don't know, word gets around. Manny's kid is on the team. Gee, I wonder if he's going to show just to watch his kid, because there were other sons of former Major League stars that were on the selected teams. Joe Pinero has a kid that plays for Westminster Academy. David Ortiz's kid is on the same team. The night before, the one that I didn't go to, Pinero's kid actually pitched. And I think he did well. I don't even remember. So the night that I decided to go, I figured I'm going to see Pinero. Each team was playing 2 games each. I figured I was going to see Pinero and chuck a living, one out of him. Turns out they gave him the night off because his daughter was in a high school tournament of her own. So they said, you know what? You go watch her. We'll handle ourselves. So he didn't show up. Neither did Ortiz, although it was rumored that he had shown up in another tournament in Tampa. I don't know. But to see in that second game, Manny's kids show up, and Ramirez is actually there, I was like, all right, when's his next game? Because I got to go back. So we just started talking, and he says, I said, when's the next game? He goes, Friday at 4:30. So I decided to cancel my plans for Friday, whatever I had, which turns out, here I'm so bored that I had no plans. So I made it all about Manny. And we were BSing around. I had nothing for him. Actually, I had uploaded a cartoon that one of my Taiwan friends had made of when Manny was playing for the Ida Rhinos of the CPBL. And this kid is good. He does a lot of cartoon caricatures of a lot of NBA guys, a few baseball, yada yada. So I bring the one thing for him to autograph. Apparently, Manny never saw the thing before, so he's like, "Where's mine?" I'm like, "I only got one." He goes, "I'll tell you what, you give me that one, and then Monday come to our opener, and I'll sign a few for you." So, he said, "What the hell?" I gave him the little cartoon sheet, and watched the kid come on Friday. We hung out for a little bit, and that led to Monday where I got him to sign the photo. Didn't take a photo with him, which is what I should have, which I will do Thursday night in Jupiter, which is their next game. But he thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. And I saw those pictures that you posted on Facebook, and I will post. That wasn't the cartoon that you posted on Facebook. That was just other pictures that he signed, though, right? It was looked like it was.
No, that was actually the cartoon that I had him sign.
Oh, okay. Because to me, I thought that was just like a kind of like a CPBL baseball card or something. It looked really cool. So yeah.
No, it's actually the guy who was doing them. He was really good, and he stopped doing it. I guess because he started going to college. He had too much other stuff on his mind. But he did a lot of good stuff a few years back.
Okay.
Multiple different players, NBA, MLB, so on and so forth.
Right.
And players got a kick out of it.
Okay, well, glad he did. Well, sure he has a lot of fans in this country. He definitely has some fans in CPBL. There are some fans in Australia waiting to see him, but I don't know. It's probably a good thing for him that he didn't go over there. It might have been some health problems or whatever. Who the heck knows? But
it probably could have been a disaster for him, being over there, but at least he wanted to give it a shot. The funny part is, even though he didn't play a game over there, Sydney took the opportunity to try and merchandise what out of him and start producing jerseys, which you bought one.
I sure did, and I'll post a picture of that. Yeah. Well, you know what? It was a sweet jersey anyway, and I didn't know this. I thought they were making kind of like a new line just for him per se. I part of the reason I bought, not only because of him, but I thought the jersey in itself looked cool. It looked like a Toronto Blue Jays jersey, It had like the same font and everything, and I don't know. But I started watching other ABL games from years past, and they had them as their road jerseys as well. But so yeah, in one way I guess you could say I was a sucker, but in a way I don't regret it though. I've made worse purchases for a lot of different things over my 52 years on this planet, but I don't have any regrets for that. It's a conversation piece if nothing else. So,
I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about now that you sent it down to me, because I'll kind of shock Manny with it on Thursday to have some autographs for you.
Yeah. Just make sure he knows that it's, I intend to keep it either and probably display it. I'm not one of these shysters that, buy this stuff and then, jack it up on eBay and sell, a lot of players.
I wonder if he's even seen one besides the one that I'm going to have him sign for me.
I think he has. Well, I think I mentioned off the air, Eric. He did like a.
When they first signed him, but I don't think he's seen any of them since.
Maybe not since, but I know he wore one, and I saw on their on the Sydney Blue Sox Twitter channel, they had like a little promotional video. They had him. They had the young lady who was the batting coach that came over from the Yankees and the Cardinals. I think her name was Yael Auerbach, I think it was. And they had another player. And it was like they were at some office building in Sydney. It looked like a tall skyscraper. kind of similar to, like, I don't know, like a Empire State Building where they have, like, a big observation deck on top. And it's like you have, like, kind of like a helicopter or a drone scan over, like, the top of this building. And then you saw a camera within that deck where they're just kind of, like, chilling out and enjoying the view of Sydney, the Sydney skyline or whatever. But, so I knew he wore one there, so whether he wore one since or before, that'll be interesting. Well, you definitely ask him that, so.
Yeah, it'll be something to look forward to on Thursday.
Yeah. Well, I remember you saying on other episodes, Eric, where you had bought some merchandise, like I think you were in Taiwan and you bought like an MPB jersey or something, and people were like, why are you paying so much for a jersey like that? Not realizing that's kind of almost like the going rate for that kind of stuff in our country, but I don't know. It wasn't the cheapest thing, but I mean, you know what? It was about, I didn't do the exact conversion of Australian dollars to American, but it was pretty close, and it was kind of what you would expect to get, like if you were to buy something from a Modell's or Dick's Sporting Goods here for like a Yankees or Orioles or another Major League jersey or whatever. So
right.
Maybe a little cheaper than that, actually, but
yeah, if you do the conversion, it's not that terrible.
yeah. But
All right. So Australia's in the books. We've got all the Asian leagues to look forward to.
mm-hmm.
And I believe that we have opening dates for each league, which was posted on one of our groups.
Right, yeah, I did see that, and I also, if I'm not mistaken, isn't today, folks, we're recording the episode on February the 16th. I had heard, at least for my MLB team of choice, and it's probably true of all of them, or if it's not today, a day or two apart or whatever. I think pitchers and catchers are reporting down in spring training, aren't they?
Yeah, more or less everybody's starting to report.
Right.
It's usually around this time. Full workouts will be by the weekend. Unfortunately, this will be the first year where no fans will be allowed to attend workouts.
Right.
Because of, expanded precautions. As a matter of fact, Florida had to revamp their entire spring training schedule due to the distancing of some of the teams travel-wise.
Yeah.
To cut down on the travel.
That makes sense. I had also heard locally here in Baltimore, they were talking about with the Orioles, they actually had to have like a temporary second practice field for some of the players, because it's like if you combine like the major league starters and the minor leaguers that are trying to be called up to the major league team. I heard they had like 70 players, and they said because of that they had to separate them kind of, so it's like they had to have them work at, I think like it's some separate fields, not too far from Ed Smith Stadium, but it was enough to keep them separate for COVID protocol.
Well, I know in Sarasota there are two separate complexes. There's Ed Smith, which is where the major leaguers work out, and then there is a park about 10 minutes south where the minor leaguers / non-roster guys work out. That's probably what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that is too, yeah. I now that you mentioned it, I thought they had said it was like another park, but I thought it was still in Sarasota. But yeah, it is. It's just not connected to the stadium.
It is. It's just about 10 minutes down the road, exit-wise.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So that's strange. So with this tournament that you attended to with Manny Ramirez and the other players and Ortiz's son and whatnot, how were they as far as attendance? I'm sure it wasn't like a World Baseball Classic or anything as far as capacity, but
these are small high school fields where it was basically just parents of kids, and the stands themselves are not big at all.
Right.
So if you had a couple of hundred, that's being generous.
Right.
But it was, like I said, pretty much parents and or girlfriends.
Okay, gotcha.
So, no biggie. Plus the fact, a lot of these teams, they traveled from all across Florida. So, I mean, the IMG guys, IMG is all the way in Bradenton, Florida, which is a good 2-3 hours east.
Hmm.
You really think people are going to travel that far just for high school?
No, not unless, like you said, it's their kid or,
Right. So, I wasn't worried about it too much.
No. I mean, there are some people that are hardcore into high school sports, or like you, hardcore into baseball, where you'll see anybody play baseball. So but
right, if there's something around, and the opportunity presents itself, hey, what the hell?
Yeah. And it sounds like you hit the jackpot with that particular opportunity. So
it was quite a stroke of luck. As a matter of fact, the only other bloodline of major leaguers that was on the Calvary squad, Todd Hollingsworth, actually has 2 kids on the team.
Oh, no
I'm
kidding.
Sure, they could be twins.
Oh, wow.
For all I know. It's Tug and Ty Hollingsworth.
Huh.
So I saw Todd there, so he knows me from like some of the Marlins broadcasts or whatever. I don't think I had ever met his wife, but we just started talking only because she had an incredibly weird folding chair that actually has hydraulics on it, so it makes it kind of a rocker as well.
Oh, that's wild. Okay.
Turns out you can get them at Dick's Sporting Goods.
Huh.
Which I might actually look into getting one because it was kind of cool. Of course, I told my folks about this, and they're like, "What do you need a rocking chair for? You're not old." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's cool."
Right.
I like cutting edge stuff.
Right. Yeah, and
of course it's...
Yeah, Mom, if I can get Todd Hollingsworth to sign the damn thing, it might be worth it as well. So there you go.
Well, I had nothing for Hollingsworth to sign or anything. Plus, you don't have a bobblehead, so
no.
That lets him out. Oh yeah, I did manage to win today a Manny bobblehead from the Dodgers for the 1 year that he was there, or whatever time he spent there.
Yeah, because that year, was he even there for a year? I thought he was kind of almost like a playoff rental for them, kind of. Or did he play a whole season?
I don't even know if he did. That might have been during his last suspension. I don't know.
Yeah, I saw...
I don't remember the circumstances, but they were stupid enough to make a piece of memorabilia for him in the Dodger uniform, so...
Well, hey, some people will buy that kind of memorabilia. I don't know anybody like that myself. No, I'm just kidding.
There's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah. Hey, I don't give a damn. It's a cool-looking jersey, Eric. You got to admit.
Sure. P.T. Barnum had us in mind, when he made that statement.
Yeah. I mean, 2 years ago, I never thought I'd be buying, baseball merchandise of teams from Korea or Australia. So, But I have, and I probably will do more in the future, so.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully to be in person to do it, Go to Canberra, get a Ben Spoke beer, buy another hat or a shirt, and maybe listen to play-by-play of our buddies over there. I don't know. Well, I wish they were our buddies. They were funny as hell, but...
Yeah, they responded to my tweets, so I consider them close, warm, personal friends.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah.
Knowing them, they'll probably see me in Australia one day and be like, "Don't you remember me? You answered my tweet once." And they'll be like, "Yeah, shut up."
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, those guys were great announcers, though. I mean, they did call the game properly when they needed to, but when they did go extracurricular, it wasn't like Giambi where he was talking about stupid pictures of him with Michael Jordan or Coach K or whatever. It was more, they were actually referencing baseball movies. They were talking about, Field of Dreams and Major League and going just a bit outside. I mean, and just pop references with songs and stuff. But their best commentary, they kind of remind me of a football announcer here in this country, Ian Eagle, where I think I had heard he was calling that streaker that ran onto the field during the Super Bowl. And he gave an epic description of that. It was hilarious. Those guys are excellent with that. I think it was either playing the wild card game with Sydney, or it might have been one of the weekend before that. But they showed a thing where a foul ball was going out into the stands. They said, "Oh, it just missed the ticket," and then they were calling play-by-play of like these 8 kids chasing after a baseball, and this one poor kid stumbling said, "Oh my goodness, that young man, he just made it, tough lesson for him," and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, oh my god.
Oh God, that's why God created YouTube.
And I'll tell you what, if I go to a game there, I'm definitely going to bring my phone so I can... Well, of course, I don't know. Australia, they might have it like where might be like on their pay TV or whatever. I was going to say I would bring my phone so I can hear their commentary on YouTube while the game's going on. Just kind of like how I used to do as a kid, bring like an AM radio, listen to the play-by-play while I'm at a baseball game, but,
Yeah, that's what people do.
Yeah. I did. So we do have a lot of games going on. I was trying to look for the international thing in that Facebook group. I remember seeing that, and my computer is deciding it does not want to cooperate with me right now. My goodness. But
I'm sure it's weather related.
Oh yeah. We have had some not so nice weather here. Definitely. Compared to Florida, that's for doggone sure. But let me ask you this, Eric. There was an issue as far as there were a lot of teams changing the starting times of these games. Some of them, they're starting the games early. Which I was kind of confused by that in a way. I guess they kind of want to be considerate of fans, having to get up early the next day. But I remember when they used to have games here in Baltimore at 7:30, and then they wound up switching them to 7. I used to be pissed because of rush hour. You'd be like, to me, it seemed like sometimes, I don't know, one job I was working, I had to come through kind of like a DC suburb through home, and I don't know, sometimes I wouldn't get home till like 7 or 8 o'clock, and I'd be pissed, like, why are they starting so early now, but I guess, I don't know, if they can do it in New York or other cities that are much more crowded than ours, I guess they can do it here, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of strange, especially since nobody's coming to the games anyway. They can start the games really whenever the heck they want, I mean, I don't know.
I remember a couple of years ago when they started moving weekday games in New York, Yankee-wise, to like 6:30 instead of 7, which was an oddball starting time. And it kind of took its toll on the fans because they were only letting in fans an hour and a half before the game instead of the usual 2. And just from a interaction standpoint, you cut off a half an hour of possible interaction because of the earlier starting time and the fact that employees were only getting paid for a certain amount of time.
Right.
So, I mean, there's nothing you can do. And of course, this year with certain restrictions, you don't know how many fans are going to get let in. I know in New York, we got told the directive that 10% will go in. So 10% of, I believe, Yankee capacity is 48,000, so it's close to 4,800.
Right.
City Field, it's about 7,000 left, so do the math.
Right. So
you got to be able to at least figure out who out of those 40, 5,000 people are going to actually be able to get let in. And it makes it fall on the full season ticket holders.
right, I was going to say it's going to. I guess they'll choose between the season ticket holders. I guess. I mean, that's especially since now they have like
they've
certain.
got to get their act together, especially with 6 weeks to go. And quite frankly, nobody has a clue.
Right.
As far as who's going to get priority.
I guess it would be like the full season ticket holders, and then it'll trickle down to like the 20 game plan people and stuff like that. And then
I'm sure that there's more than 5,000 full season holders.
Right. Oh yeah, I don't doubt that whatsoever.
So who knows?
Yeah. I know it's like my father used to be a Baltimore Ravens season ticket holder, and even 2 years after his death, my mother was still getting season ticket applications for them. And they had for this previous season, they were talking about, how they had plans to redistribute the tickets, and they were still trying to figure out, basically saying we're talking to the city and the state as far as how many people we can have, and come to find out, the only people that were able to go to the games were maybe like a few first responders, and then like some friends and relatives of the players themselves. And other than that, they were empty stadiums. Now, from what I heard they were talking about doing here locally, is they were talking about doing the thing where it's like they would be like, kind of like what they did, I guess, with the World Series in Texas, where you had like four-seat pods kind of thing, where you had to like buy, even if tickets were available, you couldn't just buy a ticket for yourself to go to get a general admission seat and hang out in the, on Utah Street to catch a foul ball. You had to buy 4 tickets, so they're doing that shenanigans again, and it's like, I don't know. I think it's just teams in our country being greedy, because these Asian leagues, I don't think they do that over there. I don't know, check on some of the other people in those, like the My KBO and some of the other groups. I don't remember seeing that in Korea or Japan, but they did it for the NFL for some teams. It was like Ravens fans were complaining on the radio here. They were talking about going to see the Ravens play the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia, and they opened their stands where you had to buy like a block of 4 tickets, and I mean the tickets my father and I had were about $1.25 each, so you had to drop like $500, and to go to one game. That's, I don't know, that's nonsensical. That's just greedy. That's just bullshit.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, and not only that, but what I'm used to paying for a CPBL subscription because of the devaluation of the dollar over there, I'm paying probably about $10 more, $10 to $13 more because of the conversion rate than in past years. I don't care, obviously, but
Well, that's different. That's conversion to, I mean, yeah, you could say there's some shenanigans there too, but that's more understandable. I think just anything where you're converting different currencies, I think you might have to pay a little more.
Right.
But over there, you were telling me though the tickets were much more affordable than they are here. But
oh yeah, for an average game, I mean, you could buy a general admission ticket for like $10.
Yeah, that's like going to a minor league game. That's cheaper than some minor league games, but
exactly.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to make this positive. We're showing our love and our passion for baseball, and we're doing it by me complaining about prices in this country before tickets even go on sale. But much as P.T. Barnum in Australia had me for Manny's jersey, they'll probably get me for some tickets to some games, too, if they open them up, Eric. And they'll do it for a lot of other people, I'm sure. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping they do open it up in the summer. I do want to travel to some other nearby cities for games. I have family out in Pittsburgh. I want to go to a game at PNC Park. I even, as you may also know, I do a professional wrestling show, and a local all-women's group in Chicago followed me on Twitter, and I was thinking of maybe going over there and maybe catching a Cubs game and maybe one of their wrestling events if they are open for such. But
that can work.
Yeah. And some of these ladies, Eric, you wouldn't mind seeing them wrestle with you or wrestle each other, but the group is called Shimmer Wrestling, folks. So if you like your professional wrestling, you like your women professional wrestling, check them out. I mean, a lot of people that are in the WWE started out over there, so it's a good time. Anyway. So, all right. So you have more plans to watch Manny be Manny and watch Manny Jr. be Manny Jr. Do you have any other tournaments or anything going on? I know it's still kind of a lull before the spring training starts, if it starts at all. You have anything going on over there?
Well, spring training starts on the 28th with a bunch of games. How I'm going to work it, I don't know. College, some colleges are starting up this weekend. I'm probably going to hit a game at FIU on Friday night, which I do have one friend that still goes there. And as a matter of fact, this will be a freshman year for Joe Girardi's youngest kid.
Oh, no kidding.
Which again, the more I see these guys pop up, the older I feel.
Right.
When you start watching these guys, as players, and then all of a sudden their sons are popping up, and they're playing either in college level or minor league level and stuff like that.
Right.
Wait a minute, how old are we?
Well, I think I mentioned on another episode I had press creds for who was at the time the Orioles single A affiliate, the Frederick Keys. And I went and I got to interview a bunch of the players. They had like a media day out in the field. And one of the players was Al Bumbry Jr. I remember seeing his father play as a rookie when I was like 9 years old for center fielder for the Orioles. And I happened to see his son playing in the Orioles minor league system. And that kind of made me feel like a little in my golden years, I guess, or silver years or whatever, a little older. Good God.
You're only as old as you feel.
Yeah. I felt pretty old at that moment, I gotta tell you.
I figured, seeing Manny, even in dreadlocks, but he's got a little bit of a touch of gray in the roots there, which, it's kind of weird seeing black hair for the most part, but gray roots on the side.
Right.
And then you look behind you and you see Tom Hollinsworth, as a father figure for two of his high school kids and about to enter into college.
Well,
probably going to run into, who knows, maybe if Joe Girardi shows up on Friday afternoon. Who knows?
There you go. Well, that's one thing you were talking about, like with Manny. You were basically saying how people were suckered into wanting to see him in Sydney. One of the reasons I wanted to see him is because he was kind of close in our age. I was pulling for him because he was a little older. I wanted to see how far he could go, Kind of like what some people are doing with the Drunken Master after the Super Bowl celebration, but, But, yeah. But it was like, I remember when I was on another station, we did a show similar to this for MMA. And at the time, there was a promotion called Strikeforce, which was eventually bought by the UFC. But one person who competed in MMA for them was the football player Herschel Walker, who was and still is the same age as me now. And I remember watching the MMA fights, and my partner was an amateur fighter. He was like in his late 20s, early 30s, who had just come back from Iraq in the Army. A lot of those guys were young guys fighting. I'm thinking, man, there's no way I could ever start UFC unless I was, went back in time like 30 years or whatever. And here I see this guy, he's pushing 50, and he's fighting at like kind of like a top level of mixed martial arts. And I was pulling him for that. Kind of like how I'm pulling for Manny. I wanted to see him do all right in the ABL, but right now he's doing what he wants, and he's there for his son. You can't fault him for that. So,
right.
All right, Eric. Well, do you have anything else you wish to add before we wrap things up, or?
Again, it's kind of we're in a long time where we're just waiting for things to ramp up, whether it's spring training, international leagues, or whatever. The only thing to look forward to, really, other than some high school and their college games this weekend, Japanese leagues are starting to play their exhibition game. I believe the first one is Sunday, everybody playing.
Okay.
The only problem is with the time difference, and they like to start their games during the exhibition season, like early afternoon their time, which comes out to be like 1 in the morning our time. So it's going to be a little rough, and they tend not to archive their games like the CPBL does.
Right.
So unless I want to be a moon warrior and just stay up all night to see a game.
Yeah, or just set my alarm to get up early. Who knows?
Yeah, that ain't happening.
Yeah. Well.
But that's pretty much it until first games actually ramp up on the 28th.
Right.
And I'll be live.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap things up. And just a little personal note. Starting next week, we're going to have a new opening for the show since we'll be talking about the summer leagues again. Eric gave a really good suggestion as far as a new theme song and possibly some new footage. So I'm going to incorporate that into the opening of the show, and I think you'll like it. So, all right. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.